In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 dangers to raising your vibration. I'm going to show you what to do to make sure this doesn't happen. And I'm going to share with you how I went through the process so that you can know how to do it too. Welcome back to another video. My name is Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 dangers of raising your vibration, 3 things that you should know when it comes to the process of raising your vibration so that you avoid the mistakes and the hardships that can come along with it. Now, with this whole process of raising vibration, this is more about, normally when we think of raising vibration, we may think of kind of getting a new perspective, seeing things from a new point of view. That may be part of it, but a lot of it is also just letting go of what no longer serves. So I'm going to show you this scale of consciousness right here. It's a scale I've showed many times before. It's a powerful understanding for the whole levels of consciousness. It's from a book that is called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. You'll see a scale of consciousness right here. And on the bottom, you'll see certain emotions such as shame, fear, guilt, moving up to then anger, eventually willingness. Then you get to love, peace, joy, and enlightenment at the top. Now, these are all different levels of consciousness, different rates of vibration. Now, we all have a core frequency, a core vibration that will resonate at either maybe between, if we're not feeling so good, maybe it resonates at like 150. If we are feeling elated, we're feeling very good, then maybe we're resonating more in the 400s or maybe even the 500s of that of love. Now, in general, the basis for this is understanding that we have a base point of where we feel based on prior experience, based on the way we think, based on what actions we do. It'll keep us entrained within a certain level of consciousness. So let me share with you a little bit of my story, just so you get kind of a basis for how this works. I used to feel very angry about my childhood. I went through a lot of, I had an abusive ex-stepmom, so I went through a lot of kind of like childhood trauma, you could say, and that kept me within a certain realm of feeling anger. I was angry towards her. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I felt some type of guilt. I felt so many different negative emotions that carried with me even after my dad divorced her when I was 15 years old at the time. So all of a sudden, me and my brother have all this freedom. We're able to have friends again. We're able to eat food, so we're more food, so we were able to gain weight. We weren't restricted in so many different ways. It was kind of like a real harsh level of control where all my brother did is we worked outside every day and we weren't allowed to really do anything other than that. We weren't allowed to really go to school activities. We had to earn it in order to go. A lot of emotional stuff as well because it was like manipulation and stuff. So anyways, I just want to give you a basis that I felt a lot of resistance. Even after I was 15 years old, I have this freedom. I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to watch TV again. I'm allowed to be like a normal kid. And from 15 to about 2021, I felt a lot of resistance because even though I had all this freedom, there was still that pain from the past of why did all of this happen? Why didn't I have, between 7 and 15 years old, I didn't have a childhood, really. And I was confused as to why that happened. And I thought maybe, there were certain beliefs that were kind of entrained into me about, am I worthy? Is this a part of who I am? So what I then did is I went through what some people call a spiritual awakening. And I was, this was when I was, I forget, it was like 22 years old. What happened is I learned meditation because I was taking Adderall for ADHD, which ADHD just means I had a lot of energy. It wasn't balanced. And I was taking Adderall, which the harsh side effects were you didn't eat very much, you didn't sleep very much. So I came across research on meditation, and basically it can do the same thing Adderall can do without the harsh side effects of you can't eat very much, can't sleep very much. So what I did is I started meditating, and within a week or two of meditating, it changed my whole entire life. I learned how to observe my thoughts rather than react. I learned that a lot of the beliefs I had came from that period in my life of believing I wasn't worthy, all those things. I became aware of how my beliefs were creating my reality. And on a base point of 1 to 10, 10 feeling amazing, 1 feeling not so good, my base point before that was like a 3 to a 5. So it wasn't necessarily horrible, but it wasn't great at the same time either. And it was less than mediocre. Then what happened is I went through my spiritual awakening. It moved my vibrational set point up to about a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Now, all of a sudden, I'm feeling this feels like ecstasy. This feels amazing. And that stayed with me. And it's honestly, I'm not enlightened. Let me first off say that. I'm not enlightened, but I raised my set point because I learned how to observe my thoughts rather than react. I remember walking around my room thinking, is this feeling going to go away? I was like, this is probably going to go away. It never did. It just became my natural set point. So it became less euphoric in a way. Like it just became natural, you see. And there were a lot of things that happened. So the things I'm going to share with you, the 3 dangers of raising your vibration, because even though that sounds very good, there's also drawbacks to that as well. So you could say that on the scale of consciousness, I most likely went from maybe a 150 to 250 calibration to that of more of a 350 to a 450, because that's when 400s is when you start to get into the intellect of the mind. You then start to brush upon that of unconditional love, which I have more so been between the 4s and the 5s. I haven't really been in the unconditional love yet, but it's more about, I've been learning about the intellectualness of creating our own reality, understanding how to let go of a lot of what doesn't serve. And by doing that, we raise our level of consciousness. We can manifest and create things in our life much easier from these higher levels of consciousness than the lower levels. The lower levels are emphasizing that we aren't already where we want to be. When we create from the lower levels, we create a lot of resistance and things just don't happen as easy. So in this process of me then going through that spiritual awakening, me feeling completely differently, so much about my life began to change. Things with my life began to change when it had to come to the vibration, how I felt. It changed people's perception of me because then I'm a totally different person. Imagine you going from being like a certain type of, having like a certain type, just a lot of energy. I remember I used to work at Nordstrom's and I was like this person that would just walk around. I would just say things to people to get a response. I just had fun. I was constantly goofing around, which is great, but at the same time, it wasn't very balanced. All of a sudden I come back and I'm much more like, I'm still loud, still have a lot of energy, but it's much different. It's much more grounded. And people were like, what happened? Like, why are you so different? You know? And it was almost like people just didn't understand. So with this process, the first thing that may happen, the first danger of raising your vibration is that certain people may not resonate with you anymore. So I remember that at that period in my life, I was working at that job. I had a lot of people, I had a lot of friends and stuff. And there were people that just did not understand what I was going through. They didn't understand how I went from one way of being to a completely different way of being. I started to really dive into metaphysics, understanding how we create our reality from our thoughts, all of these things. And to people that normally know you as a certain type of person, when they look at you and they see this kind of change within you, it kind of scares them. You know, and I kind of get it now that I look back at it, because there were a lot of people, a lot of friends, even family, like my dad, for example. He didn't know what happened. He thought I was on drugs or something like that, because I go from one way to all of a sudden meditating, all of a sudden talking about like higher consciousness and stuff like that. And he just didn't understand it. He had no other explanation for it. And now the paradox is that I quit drinking, did not have to drink anymore. I quit doing anything. No, there's no drugs. There was no anything other than me being and meditating once a day and doing things that were kind of like conductive of the lifestyle I was living. But there was no drugs, alcohol, nothing. So it was kind of a paradox because it was actually far of the opposite of what we thought was happening. But people nonetheless did not get it. So when you start to resonate with those higher levels, like I was showing you, not that this means you're enlightened or anything, you know, sometimes I say things, people think I'm like insinuating that I'm enlightened, but when you do start to live, I do believe I do live more so within the 400 to 500 range than I used to, and I believe you have the same ability as well. That's why I'm sharing this info, that's why I share a lot of the videos on my channels, because I want other people to feel the same way that I do. So in the 400 to 500s, all of a sudden you see things from a new point of view. And you don't feed into the lower levels as much anymore. So what will happen is you have some friends that may be feeling in the lower levels. Maybe they're feeling anger. Maybe they're feeling angry at the government, angry at people that make a lot of money. They feel angry at things that have happened to them in the past. And when they're feeling this negative emotion, you may look at it and not be able to connect to it as much as you used to. Maybe you are able to like observe it and understand it, but you don't feed it as much. You're not, if someone's like, oh, blah, 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 about the government, you're not like, yeah, the government, blah, blah, blah. You're just kind of like, it just is what it is. You're just kind of like more so in your own world, in your own level of consciousness. So one thing that may happen when you go through the process of raising your vibration is just that people begin to fall out of your life. And this isn't a bad thing. Sometimes you have to let go to then let in. So this is about realizing that it's about resonance. And when you start to resonate at a higher level of consciousness, there are some people that won't dig it. There are some people that won't like it. And the thing that you want to avoid here, though, this is one of the dangers that's on the other side as well, is you want to refrain from developing what is called a spiritual ego. So a spiritual ego was something I actually developed when I went through my spiritual awakening and started raising my vibrational state of consciousness, which is a big paradox because it's like you're more aware but less aware that you are judging in a way. It's like a form of judgment. And that's what I did because I was like, oh, I'm in this higher state of consciousness and everyone else just doesn't understand me. I was kind of bitter, honestly, because I just felt like nobody got it. You know, there were very few people a couple people did, but most people did not understand it. So when they see me and what I'm doing, they assume that there's something going on, something weird going on. They kind of assume that I'm weird or something because they don't understand the whole meditation or spiritual awakening type thing. But nonetheless, then I was like, well, they just don't get it. They're just not there. They're just, they're just at their level. You see what I mean? And then it almost develops this spiritual ego. So what I had to learn to do is to let go of this spiritual ego, realize everyone's on their own journey. This is simply a matter of the process itself. So this is about just more so embodying how you prefer to be, letting you be yourself and letting other people be themselves. And if they do have beliefs about you that you don't prefer, just observe them and let them be. It doesn't mean anything to you. And that will help you move through this process because there may be some people that just fall out of your life because they don't resonate anymore. The good news is that if you trust the process by letting go, you will then let in people that really do resonate with you. You'll then let in people, whether it's even online at first, we have the online now so we can connect to so many people around the world, or maybe it's just you actually being more present to the moment and seeing that what really matters in life is you being your authentic core. So that's the first one. You may notice that people kind of fall out of your life. You may notice that you start to feel completely different about yourself. And then the second danger of raising your vibration is that there may be radical shifts in your life. Because when you change your vibration, when you change your state of consciousness, it will then change what you resonate with, and you may notice a career change. You may notice, like I said, with the relationships, you may notice that you start to get pulled to move to a different place of wherever you live. You may notice these things because they just simply don't resonate anymore. Like I said in the beginning of the video, this is more about you letting go than it is piling on. And when you let go of the lower levels of consciousness, you let go of all the activities that are attached to it. You let go of all of the, kind of the baggage that may come with it as well. So when I was showing you those levels of consciousness, then what you'll notice is that there's certain, on the lower emotions working all the way up, you'll notice that there's that certain scale. I'll kind of show it to you one more time. Let me share with you something else that did happen. I feel guided to say this. This isn't something I plan on saying in this video, but I think it's powerful, and I think some people may want to hear this. Now, this may not resonate with everyone, but this is something nonetheless that did happen when I went through my spiritual awakening. So what you'll notice on the scale of consciousness is at the bottom, you'll have, certain emotions. Then you move up, and eventually you'll see the 2 and 300s. 2 and 300s may be eventually get into like anger, and then you get into like willingness, love, and all of those. Well, there's certain, like you could say, drugs, and it's not really, some people consider weed a medicine, but nonetheless, I used to smoke weed. I used to smoke weed in 2011, 2012, and I did it quite often. After when I got off work, it was pretty much the first thing I would do. And then I had you could call it a spiritual awakening. You could also call it where I started to just feel completely different. On that base point of 1 to 10, I started to go from the 3 to a 5 to the 7 or an 8. I had that shift in feeling, and what happened is then if I were to smoke after I had that shift, it would actually bring me down. I would go from that 7 or an 8 down to like a 5 or a 6. And I was so confused. I'm like, this made me feel good for so long. Why is this doing this now? And I just did not understand it. But then reading the book Power versus Force, I became aware that marijuana or weed resonates at about 350. So it's not necessarily that low, but it's also not necessarily that high. So it depends on where you are on the scale of consciousness. Now, it doesn't mean that if you enjoy weed that you're of a lower consciousness, but it may mean that in order to move to a higher level, you may have to let go of that in order to really reach higher states that you may not even be able to imagine right now. Now, if you do it daily, I'm not judging you. I'm not saying that it's even bad. I'm just saying be aware of where it lays on this level of consciousness, because there's some people that I see that I think could go much further with their level of consciousness or with what they're experiencing, but sometimes because of the habit of doing it, because of doing it often, it kind of keeps them, because I was there too. I know what it's like. When you do it and you hear someone else talk about it and talk about it in a different way, it doesn't feel good. It feels like, why is, it's kind of going against the beliefs, you know what I mean? But nonetheless, I feel like saying it. I feel guided to say it right now because I see so many people doing it and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying, this isn't about right or wrong. This is about, does it resonate and is it serving? So if it resonates at 350, it may make you, if you're feeling resistance from your job and you do it, you'll immediately feel better. But the thing is then you could be getting into the 500s, the 400s mainly, but that may be keeping you as an anchor down. So there are certain, alcohol resonates at about 200, so it resonates even lower. So weed isn't necessarily the lowest level one by any means, but I feel guided to say this because I've heard a lot of people, I've mentioned this once or twice in a live Q&A and people wanted more on it. And I've never really put it in a YouTube video because I've always been afraid of putting it out there because I know so many people do it, especially so many people that watch my videos. And it's just so many people do it in general as well. I mean, I live in Las Vegas. It's legal in Vegas, Colorado, Seattle, California. I'm on the West Coast, so it's so common. There's nothing wrong with it. This isn't about right or wrong, but it is that, does it resonate and is it serving you? That's the new question to ask. And if it's not, I promise you that if you do decide to let it go because you feel guided to, that after you get used to it, it will be worth it. That's something I just felt guided to say. I know not everyone really wants to hear that, but that was my experience with it because after that, I have not smoked. I don't smoke. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do caffeine. Not because I'm better than anybody, but just because I believe that the more we cultivate this consciousness, this energy within us, the more those things aren't even necessary anyways. Now, the third danger of raising your vibration has to do with old things coming up. So within our body, there are certain emotions, there are certain stored energies, and when we start to move through them, we start to see them come up, we can then decide to let them go. Now, many times when we are entrained into certain levels of consciousness, what happens is they remain on autopilot, so we're simply not aware of them. Now, as we raise our vibration though, as we move up the scale, it then makes it so that we almost have to let go. Those things will get brought to the front. So it may seem scary sometimes. This is when sometimes people go through the dark night of the soul and they have an experience like that. But then what that does is that gives them the opportunity to look at it, to let it go, and then to come out even stronger on the other side. So I know for me, I recently went to a place in Costa Rica, and there it was like a life transformation place. And when I went there, what we did is we did this breath workshop. In this breath workshop, we breathe this certain type of way for about 45 minutes. It's this like deep breath. It's called transformational breath work. And I just did not know what to expect. I heard of it. I went into it not knowing, having any expectations. You do this certain type of breathing. You actually breathe through your mouth, which is kind of counterintuitive to me, but it's what you do. And you do this certain breathing technique for about 45 to 50 minutes with music in the background. There were about 30 other people there. And they said that when things come up, just let them go. There will be certain emotions that come up that have been stored within the body. So what I did is I was going through, started to do the exercise, and every now and then a practitioner would come over and kind of adjust a little bit the breathing to see how to breathe properly, and kind of like loosen up certain muscles and whatnot. And I'm breathing, and all of a sudden, in this exercise, about 20 minutes in, my hands clamp up like this, like almost like a praying mantis, and I'm laying there on the floor like this, and they said that something like that may happen. They said you may feel inclined to bang on the floor to release the stored energy, and it was something I totally did not expect to happen, but I felt this tenseness in my hands, really tense, and it didn't feel bad. My body actually started to kind of go numb, but it wasn't a bad numb. It wasn't like I was afraid of it, but nonetheless, I could feel this going through my body. And then what happened is there were waves of sensation that went through my body, and I could feel myself letting go of energy that was stored up, letting go of things that no longer served. So as I did that, I just kept thinking to myself, let go, let go, let go. And as I did that, I was letting go of stored emotion from my past childhood, from the kind of person I had to become to cope with all of that stuff, the control that my ego had to develop. I had to kind of develop a strong ego for me to become successful on YouTube. I started making daily videos. I started putting everything I did into what I do for a living. And that kind of developed this ego, this control that I had to have over my life for things to happen the way I want. And what I learned is how to let all of that go. I remember afterwards we had like a sharing and I was kind of explaining my experience, and he said it was a very common type experience. Some people were crying, some people were laughing, some people were just banging around, some people were humming. I was humming for a while as well. But this was really a transformative type experience, and it lasted about an hour. And after that, I felt so very just relaxed, peaceful, serene, euphoric. And that was letting go of those kind of emotions. So it seems like a bad thing though, right? I was feeling that tenseness, all of this stuff. But what was happening is the oxygen I was bringing up inside my body, I was increasing the oxygen levels of my body. That was causing things to come up. And then I was able to look at them and then to let them go. You know, even though my eyes were closed and I'm kind of laying down, I started to bang my hands like halfway through, and I could feel myself just letting go of that stored energy. Now that may seem like a scary experience, but it was very transformative, and it was something that really allowed me to let go of things that just no longer served me. Now, as much as what they told me as well, I remember I was talking to one of the transformational breathwork practitioners afterwards, and she said that the way people breathe, the breath pattern we have, they can look at someone's breath pattern and they can see almost exactly or generally what that person's personality traits are. So I said, okay, well, what's my personality trait? Then she saw me breathe for 40 minutes, you know, because she came around and adjusted me a couple times. She was like, you're an overachiever. She says, you have a very strong desire to be successful. A lot of people that breathe that way are successful, but they create a lot of resistance because they have this armor around them. They breathe from their back. And it's so true. I've always breathed like, there's certain times during the day I go, kind of breathe like that because I'm controlling my breath, because I need to like control my breath and bring in more. And she just kind of explained that what you can begin to do is to let go. You can begin to see that things can be easier than you make it. And that from that point going forward, I learned how to let go of the control of my ego even more, and I started to feel an even a higher level of consciousness. So I know all of this may seem a little bit that could also be more of a metaphor than anything else, but it was something that happened that was really very true for me, is letting go, breathing in more. If you breathe shallow, then maybe you don't feel as confident. You can learn to allow your breathing in a completely new way, and it can change everything. The more oxygen you bring in your body, the more you're going to let go of stored emotions, and that's something that can help as well. So with this process, there's also a guided meditation that I made to help you to raise your vibration so that you don't go through a lot of these kind of warnings and dangers of going through the process, kind of like the side effects that aren't preferable. I created a Raise Your Vibration MP3 that will show you exactly how to raise your vibrational set point. If you listen to it for 21 days, I think it can absolutely transform your life. That's going to be in the top of the description box. It is absolutely free. I'm also going to be doing more live Q&As on Instagram. I do also daily videos on IGTV with exclusive native content. So if you want, you can check me out there as well. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the little notification gear so that you can see the daily vids that I do. And other than that, as always, peace, love, and namaste.